the more that we can create these great job opportunities, the more we're going to attract talent, the more companies like FreshBooks can continue to go from strength to strength here in the city.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to Toronto Global and another edition of the Boardroom Brief. I'm very grateful today to have Faye Pang join us for our conversation here. It is a cold winter's day outside, but whenever you come by and visit, you've got very warm vibes, which I appreciate. So it's good to have you here, especially on a day like this, and I'm excited for our conversation. So you are the Chief Growth Officer for FreshBooks, right? Canadian-based company, and we're going to talk all about that. But we always like to start a bit from the beginning when we have guests like you on. So, before you're Chief Growth Officer and as you move through your career, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your beginning of your professional life. Very first job. My very first job was at Canadian Tire. What was that for you? And maybe what experience did you have?
Canadian Tire headquarters?
Oh, I wish. Retail, Vaughan.
Okay.
The worst performing store in Ontario. That was not all me. But it was I was 16 years old and my first job. But
Most improved.
Most improved,
yes. Okay, my first, I don't know if I'd call it professional job, but real job was as a busser at Jack Astor's
Oh, no way.
in Mississauga.
Wow.
That was my very first job. So table busing
Yeah.
at 15
Yeah.
for tip out,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. And what about that was, so for example, for me at Canadian Tire, I found that having good answers for people, hey, is that item in stock? Yes, it is actually, or no, it's not. And having kind of, confident answers and understanding, how customers are interacting and what they're looking for from support for people in the store.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest takeaways, I don't know if you remember Jack Astor.
Of course.
But like at the time you got a t-shirt, it had a pithy little statement on the back, you had to decorate it, and the whole vibe was you'd come in and you were going to have like the best night of the week at Jack Astor's. So I got to be a part of that, and it sort of taught me, all about this notion of like unreasonable hospitality, right? How do you really try to go above and beyond? And even as a table busser, like how do you make sure you're helping people have a great time and being helpful and supportive? And then it also taught me a lot about working as a team, right? Like you are not the main show. You're very much in the background in that role. And it's the server and it's, the food and all of these things, but you contribute to that excellent experience. And so having a role to play on the team, knowing the role and playing it, I think was probably one of my early lessons.
And I'm sure that's kind of stuck with you
Yeah.
as you've moved through your career, and you've had a really fascinating series of moves over your career so far.
It's a nice way of saying you've been all over the place.
Well, I mean, I think, but there's some themes that I'm actually quite interested in. So for example, starting off a bit in the food industry, it seems, right? Cadbury and McDonald's, and tell us about that kind of movement, building a bit more of a professional, moving on from Jack Astor's.
Yeah.
That piece.
So when I graduated from university, I chose to join Cadbury. Consumer packaged goods, or CPG at the time, was like the place to go if you wanted to build strategy shops. And as a associate brand manager, you were very much at the epicenter of strategy, working with the sales team, working with the factory and manufacturing, innovation, new products, the advertising agency and the creative. And so I loved sort of the general management element of it and being at the center. And it's hard to hate chocolate. So like, it was a great place to get my fill of gum and chocolate and candy. It was also the first place I really learned about, why people choose the brands that they choose and how you build brand affinity and really that consumer connection, which has stayed with me actually throughout my career.
Well, those were a couple of more established brands, right? And then you had a little bit of a jump to Uber. And tell us more about that, especially when it comes to the branding.
Sure. Yeah. So maybe to ground us in time, I joined Uber in 2015. At the time, particularly here in the city of Toronto, I joined the Toronto office. It wasn't yet regulated, right? One of my very first team building events was actually heading down to City Hall with a sign that was really asking and advocating for the city to regulate Uber and ride sharing and bring it to the masses that were demanding it. And so it was a really interesting move from consumer packaged goods and products into tech. It taught me a lot about rapid growth,
Mhm.
hyperscale,
Mhm.
hypergrowth,
Mhm.
and yeah, just a really incredible introduction to the world of tech.
Mhm. And so that introduction to the world of tech, is, at least as, through Uber was from the US perspective. What was it like, joining that environment? Again, back in that time, 2015, a bit of a different Uber,
Yeah.
than what we know now, but, what was it like working for a US company?
Uber was a fairly large company by the time I joined. Globally, it was about 4,500 employees. The Toronto office was small, less than 100. And so you kind of felt like this little micro culture within the broader Uber culture. So, we're very proud of the fact that Toronto office had its own culture and identity. We were really passionate about, being an innovative office and footprint for the organization. And also really proud of the fact that there were a lot of firsts
Mhm.
here in Toronto
Yeah.
or Uber, right? So whether it was new product launches, I was lucky enough to be on the team that helped to launch Uber Eats back in 2015, and
Right.
that actually landed in Toronto as a global first, right? The very first time Uber Eats went live was in
Here.
Toronto. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
We just celebrated the 10-year anniversary last week
Of Uber Eats?
of Uber Eats,
Wow, that's fantastic.
both globally and in Toronto. It was
Yeah.
one and the same.
One thing that we always talk about for Toronto as we're pitching Toronto Global, as we're pitching to, international companies, is the diversity of the region and also our food
For sure.
scene. Can I ask, was that part of it maybe? Hey, we have a very diverse and rich food scene. Was that something that was
You know what? Great food scene. I think we had a very strong team here, so there's a lot of excitement around putting it with Bowie, who was the GM for Toronto at the
right?
time, and really trusting him to lead the charge.
Yeah.
Really great market that felt untapped, right? And like a big opportunity, and
Mhm.
for sure, incredible world class restaurants
Mhm.
based out of the Toronto area.
Absolutely. Scarborough food scene is something I always talk about when I go down to San Francisco,
So
right?
good.
Yeah. So, moving from Uber, you went on to, Xero.
Yes.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so made the move from Uber to Xero in 2020, and Xero's a Kiwi-based company that was expanding into Canada. They'd already had a presence here, and
Mhm.
I really took on the role of Canadian country manager, help them continue to scale.
Mhm.
So very interesting to work for another global organization as the Canadian regional lead and
Yeah.
help them think about how to take the playbook that had worked in other markets and then adapt it to what was needed here from a regulatory perspective, from
Mhm.
a customer perspective, from a, you know, like compliance perspective.
Right. Very, very important pieces. Again,
Mm.
in the work that we do at Toronto Global, working very closely with a lot of the Canada, GM site leads, as they're building up their presence here.
Yeah.
We actually first met when you were at Xero.
Correct.
And so, very impressive in terms of the role you're taking on, the leadership position you're taking on there. So kudos in terms of how you built out the team. Well, Xero being kind of an advocate and champion in tech for small businesses, and moving on to FreshBooks, there's another, through line there.
Yeah, maybe the thing to know about my history is I grew up as the daughter of two immigrant small business owners.
Right.
So my parents ran their own small business for 20 plus years
Yeah.
in Mississauga. And a lot of, what I'm passionate about and what drives me is grounded and rooted in watching them toil away for years, right? Watching my mom do the books with no bookkeeping
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Watching them fret and stress over, do we have enough cash in a bank to pay all of our employees this week,
Mhm.
right? And so when I think about the power that technology has and the organizations I've worked at, that they have to really positively impact small business owners,
Mhm.
I'm often thinking about my parents,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
the lived experience that I have in watching them really struggle, ultimately be successful, but
Mhm.
work really hard to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, I totally empathize, with that feeling as well as, also the child of immigrants, who've come to Canada,
Yeah.
seeing how they've kind of built up their own businesses and careers, kind of you see things there and then that kind of does drive your career in a direction where you
For sure.
yeah.
And it's in many ways it's the Canadian dream, right?
Mhm.
Like you come here as an immigrant for a better life for your kids, and then you build something from scratch. And so yeah, it really drives a lot of what I'm passionate about and where I choose to spend my time.
Mhm.
And therefore it was a bit of a no-brainer to be able to join a Canadian company like FreshBooks that is shares my passion for helping small business owners
Yeah.
and making their lives easier and giving them time back through technology. Like
Mhm.
there's so much that resonates with me about the mission.
Yeah. And so I guess kind of moving through kind of geographies,
Mm.
if we can say that, right? U.S., Kiwi, New Zealand, FreshBooks here being kind of Canadian, true
Canadian,
Canadian.
truly. Born
Yeah,
and bred.
yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like? As you kind of moved into FreshBooks, was it more of a smooth transition? Go from the U.S. to New Zealand to, as you're saying, an affinity there to Canadian.
Listen, one of the things I was really hoping for as my next move was to get to work for a Canadian company, right?
Right.
As you know, passionate advocate for, not just Toronto, but Canada more broadly, and really, really believe that we can do amazing things from right here in the
Yeah,
city.
absolutely.
And so goal seeking for a company that was Canadian, and feel really lucky to have found FreshBooks, which was founded here in Toronto,
Mhm.
23 years ago, the basement of a Toronto home. And
Yep.
from there has grown to, the successful company that it is today.
Mhm.
Um, so how was the transition? Like, it was pretty seamless, to be honest with you, because it really felt like, in a lot of ways, coming home to a culture that I felt very comfortable in. And
Mm.
we're very lucky at FreshBooks. It's a great team. We obviously are very mission driven, and passionate about the customers we serve.
How do you see Toronto as kind of a good place um, to build, right? To continue to build, as you were saying, FreshBooks has been around
Yeah.
for a number of years. So how do you see Toronto as that place for FreshBooks to remain rooted and build?
For sure. It's I think part of FreshBooks' success, candidly, has been because it was built and scaled here in
Mm.
Toronto, right? It's allowed us to attract incredible talent,
Mhm.
a diverse employee base that naturally brings that perspective to product building and scaling that allows us to be a global organization and serve customers all around the world
Mhm.
without needing to try too hard to do so.
Yeah.
Just the nature of the employee base that we have and
Mhm.
the lived experiences that they all
Mhm.
share.
Mhm.
So I think it's been a real strength for
Mhm.
us, and we're very proud of the fact that this is a Toronto born
Mhm.
and bred company.
Mhm. Well, you mentioned a word there, kind of diverse and diversity of things, right? And that's something that as Torontonians, we're very comfortable with that term, right? Diversity of food or diversity of people and cultures. Is that something that you think translates to that talent advantage that international companies kind of can really lean into when they're looking at Toronto and Canada as a place to hire and expand?
Absolutely. I mean, with one shot in setting up in Toronto, you get access to world-class, post-secondary education,
Mm.
like educated, like workforce. You hear more and more of these companies, tech and non-tech, that are setting up
Yeah.
offices here in Toronto to take advantage of that.
Mhm.
I think it's really easy to attract talent to come here from other places because of our, really like welcoming environment and the great quality of life that you can have in the city. So it's also made recruiting and retention easier
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, and then obviously speaking to the choir in that
yeah.
sense.
Don't need to convince you.
No. But if I may maybe challenge you a little bit, if I was a Bay Area founder sitting here right now, what would be that 30-second pitch that you would say, as in terms of like why Canada, why Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely believe Toronto is one of the best cities in the world, right? To live, but also to build.
Mhm.
I think it is a city that naturally attracts a diverse customer base
Mhm.
and employee base for you to draw from. I think there are a lot of really innovative, innovation-friendly policies and constructs and systems that allow you to scale quickly.
Mhm.
And I think there's some unique challenges here, but it forces you as an entrepreneur to actually be better, whether it's, trying to strive to hit that product market fit or deliver an incredible customer experience that you can incubate here
Mm.
and then scale to other places
Mm.
around the world.
Well, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
So it's very compelling. But you mentioned again, just another word there that I picked up
Mm.
on was kind of the challenge aspect.
Mm.
And so we are at Toronto Global, we do obviously pitch as best we can. But we also are, there's a good and sometimes a not so good
Mm.
of Canada and Toronto. And we try to guide our companies through that process of setting up here and kind of understanding that we are a separate country, right? And we have differences. So with your experience in terms of Xero and Uber Eats specifically, what, if I may say, kind of sometimes challenges should companies look out for, or differences maybe is a better word in terms of the Canadian market?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I might talk about the customer mindset, right?
Hmm.
There's this lesson I've learned over the years, like as Canadians, we're very reticent to be the first.
Mm,
We definitely don't want to be the last.
mm.
And so there's like sales implications when you think about that, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not like some other regions where we're jumping on that innovation and we're trying to grab it as soon as it's available.
Mhm,
But as soon as we see social proof or others are starting to adopt it,
mhm.
we're very quick to fall in line. And that's just a cultural nuance that you need to be aware of and factor into your sales cycles. I think the other maybe challenge element of it is um, we're very nice
Mm.
as Canadians.
Yes.
And we do this thing that I call the Canadian no, which is if you're selling me something, I'm not going to tell you no right to your face.
Mhm.
I'm going to just continue to string you along and ask you more questions until you finally get the message that it's actually a no.
Yeah.
And for founders and sellers, I think it's really important to be reticent of that
Mhm.
so that you can disqualify and not waste your time just because, Canadians maybe a little bit too nice to tell you no to your face.
Yeah. No, I understand that point for sure.
Yeah.
And so, pivoting a bit more to your leadership at FreshBooks, you were kind of speaking to the customer and that experience.
Mm,
You serve customers all over the world,
absolutely.
right? And so, when as a Canadian-based company, growing in North America and globally, um, how do you see that flip side, right? How do you
Mm.
see as a Canadian tech company going abroad? How are you translating
Yeah.
that experience, our talent, or however you may say it, to other markets around the world and other customers.
Yeah, listen, brand Canada is really strong.
Mm,
So when customers around the world find out that we are, in fact, headquartered here in Toronto and that we're a Canadian company, there's a real positive sentiment
mhm,
around that, right? There's a real like, oh, I don't know if I want to call it neutrality, but like a real positive sentiment around, okay, a Canadian company, it's like I feel good doing business with them, right? So there's actually like an element of a draw there, I think,
mhm,
for a lot of our international customers that just see this as a really positive
mhm,
region.
mhm. And, in terms of that brand Canada and such,
Mhm.
you're not shying away from partnering with companies out there, and I think one recent partnership that you had, was with a US-based company called Kick.
Mhm.
So maybe moving into kind of the AI sphere
Yeah.
of things, how is FreshBooks kind of leveraging, everything that's going on? I know it's a big question, but, feel free either from a talent perspective or from a customer perspective or the products that you're building.
Yeah, when it comes to AI, we're doing a lot of things at
Mm,
FreshBooks. If you think about it from a customer support perspective and leveling up the quality of the answers and the channels in which we can reach our customers, whether
mm,
it's from a product perspective and just further embedding AI into our product. If you think about what our customers really love about using FreshBooks, the ability to invoice their customers, to track their expenses, to track the profitability of their projects,
mhm,
we're leveraging a lot of AI and machine learning to actually improve
mhm.
that workflow and that um, product for our customers. And then specifically when we think about getting small businesses to adopt AI, we have so much research that we've done in understanding what is holding small businesses back and what's their mindset around this. And
Mhm.
if you think about a solopreneur or someone who's running a business all on their own, like this is the last thing they have
Yeah.
time to think about. And
Ab
so they're really trusting the tools that they're using to say, help me understand how I can best deploy this. Like
Yeah.
build it in so that's just part of like something that comes with me just logging into the platform, being able to leverage the best of the technology. So we're really thinking about it from our owner's mindset, which is, it's not about where are all the different places that we can deploy AI.
Mhm.
It's really about how do we add value to the workflows and the jobs that they're already doing and make it feel as seamless as possible.
Absolutely. And so obviously, there's a whole bunch of chatter out there in regards to talent and AI talent and
Mm,
competing for talent and such. And again, as someone with your experience working across borders,
mhm.
leading at FreshBooks, how are you, if approaching kind of the talent aspect of things, scale, continuing to scale and grow? What is your team looking at from a talent perspective that is important for your team as you compete and build your products.
Yeah. I mean, we're a tech company, but at the end of the day, we're powered by people.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's like, that is the single most important input into the product and the experience that we create as an output.
Mhm.
So talent is everything. We think a lot about talent strategy and how do we make sure our people are thriving and growing within the organization, and then where we're recruiting from and creating an environment where we truly can bring on the best talent regardless of
Mhm.
where they live, and that we make them feel part of the team, and we've got ways to connect them into what we're doing, the mission, and
Mhm.
the people that they're collaborating with.
Mhm.
That being said, the majority of our team is based here in the GTA,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And again, I think that is a strength of FreshBooks, is that we've been a Canadian company since the very beginning, and that many of our FreshBookers are based right here.
So you've seen the Canadian tech ecosystem from different angles, right? And as FreshBooks again has been building here for a number of years, how do you see things changing? Perhaps maybe starting here in Toronto, and then more broadly the tech ecosystem.
Yeah, it's been cool over the last decade. I think, you know, let's rewind to 10 years ago. There was a very Canadian sheepishness about saying that Toronto was a great tech city,
Yeah.
right? We always felt lesser than, not just San Francisco, but maybe even Chicago at the time, New York, et cetera.
Yeah.
And what I've really enjoyed seeing over the last few years is we've started to get a bit of a swagger around, hey, like we can actually build here, right?
Agree.
More and more, we're getting those little points of validation of global organizations, global tech companies saying, like, no, we want to set up shop here. We actually want to create an engineering hub here, or we want to put an ops office here, or we want to, continue to expand here. And I think that's great. More is more, right?
Mhm.
Like the more that we can create these great job opportunities, the more we're going to attract talent, the more companies like FreshBooks can continue to go from strength to strength
Mhm.
here in the city.
Mhm.
So it's been a really fun evolution to
Yeah.
watch over the last decade.
Yeah.
The city really starting to believe in itself a little bit around being a great tech hub.
And I certainly echo that and support that sentiment. It's something that we've seen here at Toronto Global as well.
Yeah.
And we've all had to kind of shed our own Canadianness as well as we've been doing this, be
We're
more.
so bad at self promotion.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we gotta be proud of the fact that we built some really incredible
Yeah.
Canadian companies, global companies from right here in Toronto.
Mhm. Mhm. So as we've talked about the Toronto tech ecosystem kind of
Mm,
changing and evolving,
yeah.
what's kind of a core value, cultural kind of leadership element maybe that you've held close to yourself or the team has
Yeah.
that's important to keep and maintain?
So one thing that I think has remained really consistent over the history of FreshBooks as a company is this notion of keeping the customer at the core,
Mhm.
right? From when we first started, literally every single employee went through support training and answered the phone when they first started, whether you're an engineer, a sales rep, or someone actually in support.
Yeah.
And while we don't still do that today, the notion of always starting from the customer back
Mhm.
and really keeping them top of mind when we're building product, when we're designing experiences, we're optimizing journeys,
Mhm.
um, that has not changed.
And so I guess maybe to kind of wrap up
Mhm.
the conversation, 1 year from now, if you could look back and say, this was a breakout year for FreshBooks, what would that be? And if I may add, if this was a breakout year for Faye. So maybe from a company perspective and from a personal perspective, if you could
Sure,
hear. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I'm really excited for 2026. At FreshBooks, we've done a lot of work over the last year to really, clarify our strategy and get our team set up for growth and success. And we've had a really, really great year.
Mhm.
But 2026 is about really crystallizing our consumer brand. It's about narrowing in, again, refocusing on the customer, making sure we're really solving the problems that matter to them,
Mhm.
being that financial operating system for the service-based small businesses that we support.
Mhm.
And recent data that we've seen from our FreshBooks State of Small Business report is small businesses continue to struggle.
Mhm.
There's a lot of macroeconomic uncertainty. There are a lot of challenges they faced, and this is on years of struggle.
Yeah.
And so we feel a real opportunity, and in fact, a responsibility at FreshBooks to support the small business owners that we serve and
Mhm.
helping them, uh, make the complex less complicated.
Mhm.
That would be a breakout year
Yeah.
for the companies,
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
And then for me, listen, I'm just excited to be a part of that and
Yeah.
to play my role. Kept
Yeah.
going back to the very start of this conversation, which is my role in the team and making sure that we're all clear on what we're trying to do, that we're rowing in the same direction,
Yeah.
and we're really keeping the customer at the center of it all.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Maybe to again wrap around to the beginning, you're a very warm person, and we do appreciate your support both in terms of being a leader in the Canadian tech ecosystem, helping build out other companies here like Uber Eats and Xero, and then now with FreshBooks, building out a Canadian champion, tech champion here. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you everybody for participating and listening.
Thanks for having me.